Welcome to Morning Coffee Guest. I'm your host, Simone Absalom Gale. In this week's episode, we speak with Ms. Michael Jackson, Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, about the launch of the organization's social behavior campaign, Justice for All. More when we return. Welcome back to Morning Coffee Guest. We're here with Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, Ms. Michael Jackson. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us about yourself and how you got involved in advocacy.
Well, I'm from the beautiful parish of St. Anne, the Garden Parish, as we call it, and as long as I've known myself, I've always had an interest in social justice issues. My mother is a teacher, and she was teaching at School of Hope, which is a school that helps children with different disabilities. I think it was intellectual disabilities at the time. And when you get a sense of the different issues that affect the marginalized group, if you will, stigma and discrimination because of intellectual disabilities, my apologies, you find that they're most at risk of other things such as sexual abuse and so on. So because of that, it was innate in me to try as best as possible to give back. And I continued working in the social development sector. I've worked at different human rights and charitable organizations such as United Way of Jamaica, Council of Social and Voluntary Services. So it has just continued over the years, and I think JFJ is my home, and it will continue to be my home for some time.
How did you get from there to JFJ, though?
I was with Jamaica Aid Support for Life, and we are a partner organization with JFJ. And when the opportunity arise for me to be with the JFJ, and I applied for the position, and I think I did fairly well in the job interview. It was just a seamless transition because I believe in the mandate of the organization, certainly. I believe in what it stands for, and I think it was just seamless in that transition.
So have you taken your passion for advocacy into the work of the JFJ?
I am what you would have considered a behind-the-scenes person before. So my advocacy was not at the forefront. So I'm the person who would have been assisting with policy research papers, writing grant proposals. That was my main area of responsibility. So JFJ was a little bit of it was a change because you're moving from the behind-the-scenes now to obviously being in front of the camera as I'm here today. So that was a change for me. But in terms of my passion for advocacy, as I said, I believe in the work of JFJ. I believe in the issues that we touch on. I believe that every single Jamaican citizen, no matter your social class, your station in life, your education, your income, you are deserving. And the government and our fellow citizens must be responsive to that. So again, the advocacy, it was just a seamless transition.
What's your mandate now? As you know, you are the executive director. What's your mission, really?
I say for any leader, your mandate and your responsibility is try to dig deep in the passion of your staff and your colleagues so that they can buy into the collective responsibility of the organization. So as the individual who provides strategic leadership, it really is to lead by having each staff member tap into their intrinsic moral sense of value and passion for human rights. And I think we all have that collective passion at JFJ. And I think because of that, it has resulted in remarkable impact and effects so far. So
in terms of the role of Jamaicans for Justice, I don't think there's anyone who watched or newscast or any, information-based show that has not heard of JFJ. But for those who have not, what's the role and function of the organization? First of all, is it non-profit or is it for-profit?
We are a non-profit organization. We are non-partisan. And when I say non-partisan, we do not align ourselves with any political party whatsoever or political ideology in that aspect. In terms of the role of Jamaicans for Justice, this is an organization that I say has 23 years of legacy of justice. And our mandate is to ensure that the Jamaican citizens are aware of those rights and responsibilities that they have. And where the state in particular breaches those rights, then JFJ will have an opportunity to ensure that they keep the government accountable and to ensure that you have the best laws and policies that protect you. So the state should not be in the business of abusing any citizen, whether it is through arbitrary arrest and detention. The state should ensure that your rights are protected and upheld. I say to persons, for example, that the Parliament has a responsibility collectively to safeguard the Constitution, which is the supreme law of this land. That is responsible for protecting your rights and ensuring again that those rights are respected so you can live the best and fulsome life, the Vision 2030, so to speak.
Is there a need, though, for an organization such as this, you think? Because, as you rightly said, the Constitution is our supreme law, and it was made with checks and balances to ensure that no one branch of government goes over or usurps the other. So why do we need an outside, non-governmental organization to keep them on their toes?
I will say Jamaica is a maturing democracy, and we have had history of human rights abuses over the years. I won't go into our colonial past, but we have seen where the state has been the one responsible for some of the violations of our human rights. Certainly things have gotten better. You mentioned the branches of government and the checks and balances that exist. But even within that, we are a parliamentary system based on the Westminster model. So you see where the executive and the legislative branches, there are some overlap there. And because of that, the types of checks and balances that we would want, sometimes it is under threat. And remember as well, it's not just the branches of government, it's also the state institutions that fall within those branches. We have seen in particular where the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and they have gotten much better, let me say that. The JDF, they have been responsible for a number of human rights violations. We have gone through the unfortunate circumstances of the Crawl killings, Brayton 7, and we have seen victims such as Janice Allen, Michael Gale, a number of others, Mario Dean, Matthew Lee. We can continue with the list of names. So in terms of an organization such as JFJ being here, there is this concept called vertical accountability. And what vertical accountability means is that you need civil society organizations to help the government to be the best versions of themselves. JFJ, one of the results, for example, is JFJ's strident advocacy that would have seen Indicom being established. So without a JFJ, perhaps we wouldn't have been this far advanced as a mature democracy, respecting the rights of persons. And there's still much work to be done. We have heard of climate justice issues. We have heard of children in state care. We see the violations that our women and our girls face by some of the laws that need to be strengthened. So JFJ is needed, and so too are other organizations that exist.
Share with us some of these successes that has occurred for JFJ.
You know, I start with our history. So we are seeing a gas tax at the moment, and we're seeing how it is impacting us, you know, dollar devaluation and so on. So JFJ started in 1999 when you had a 31% gas tax that was imposed by the then government. You know, cost of living went up, and with that riot, JFJ said, you know what, I am looking at the other human rights abuses that exist, not just the social and economic issues, but again, you know, at that time the police killings were very high in the country. So the organization was formally put together, for lack of a better word, in October 1999. And our successes in that year alone, one, you had Michael Gale. Michael Gale was a mentally ill man who was beaten to death by the security forces at the time during a similar state of emergency, joint military operations, I should say. He was beaten to death. JFJ took on that matter. We took the case to the Inter-American Courts of Human Rights, IACHR, and the family was compensated. That same year as well, you had 52 men in Grants Pen, Kingston, who were detained by the security forces at the time, fingerprinted and so on, without any due process, without any reason or justification. And 13 of those men approached JFJ and JFJ took the matter to court and the men won. Those were two successes. But I say, beyond that, the result of those cases resulted, for example, strident advocacy continued with Michael Gale. Indicom was formed in 2010. As a result of Michael Gale as well, you, for example, if unfortunately any family member of yours is to pass, you now have the right to seek an independent autopsy. That is as a result of Michael Gale. And I can continue with JFJ saying, for example, that if we're observing a legal matter, you can take. Why is that important? It is important because it means that the public can get a sense of the justice system and the gaps that exist. JFJ, we have influenced many pieces of legislation. The Access to Information Act, that is one that JFJ, you see people talking about your right to information and you can reach out to any state institutions and get information. JFJ influenced that piece of legislation, and we continue. The most recent one, for example, NIDS, that was recently passed last year. The previous executive director, he did an excellent job in going before Parliament saying these are the recommendations that I want to put forward for the NIDS legislation, and as a result of that, a number of changes have been made based on the recommendations that we have made, and the government is going to be doing the regulations for NIDS, and the current team, we stand ready to review those regulations to ensure that you have the best version and your right to privacy is safeguarded as the government moves towards a digital platform for our information.
It seems as if you handle a lot of cases persons
Yes.
bring to you, but in some instances it tends to take a little bit longer once JFJ is involved. Why is that so?
I won't say once JFJ is involved. The justice system overall needs an overhaul because you do have case backlogs, and unfortunately resolving some of those matters, it takes time. You know, when I look at your constitutional right, for example, to a fair and speedy trial, it is unfortunate that you have some cases that will take years. Some of the cases that JFJ is involved in, you're talking about police killing matters, for example. It goes before the Special Coroner's Court. When it goes before the Special Coroner's Court, because there is only one Special Coroner, and let me be very clear, that Special Coroner's Court is to ensure that they review cases of police killings. It's only one that we have.
I'm going to break you there. I'm going to stop you there because we have to go to a quick break.
Yes.
But I'm learning a lot, though. A Special Coroner's Court, I want you to start that explanation again when we get back from our break. Stay with us. You're watching Morning Coffee Guest, and we're speaking with Executive Director for Jamaicans for Justice. We'll be right back.
I wish to inform Jamaica that the government has already launched Operation Get Every Illegal Gun. My message today, therefore, is directed to the many young men who have illegal weapons in their possession, who hide the weapons, or as they say, lock them. And I'm speaking as well to the girlfriends, the baby mothers, the sisters and the mothers who give them cover and protection. I'm giving you warning. Put down the gun. Give it up. Leave the gang. Dissociate yourself from the gunmen. Otherwise, the consequences will be grim.
Welcome back to Morning Coffee Guest. Still with us is Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, Ms. Michael Jackson. If you're just joining the program, in the first segment, we looked at the role and function of the JFJ and its contributions to national development. In this segment, though, we'll be looking specifically at the Justice for All campaign. So before the break, we were talking about cases in court and what happens when the JFJ is involved, or the overall pace it takes to complete a case?
Yes, so I was explaining the Special Coroner's Court, that is the court designed to look at police killings, look at the evidence and how credible those evidence are before you can move forward. And you only have one special coroner to serve the entire island. Now, if you read any Indicom report, I think last year we had 127 police killings. Not all of them, for example, would have been deemed extrajudicial killings, but that is why you need a Special Coroner's Court. So when you have so much court backlog, when you have so much cases going before the courts, the government is on a thrust, for example, to focus on alternative dispute resolution programs, restorative justice, because of the challenges with the court system. So JFJ, to the contrary, we have been calling for the justice system to be reformed. You need more judges. You need more paralegals in the system. You need the DPP office to be strengthened with human resource. The court system, for example, need to keep up with technology. We shouldn't have note-taking being done in the courts. You need computers to do record keeping. All of these things, the Justice Minister, for example, he has indicated over the years. So JFJ, we have been making calls for it because we cannot have persons. I mentioned Matthew Lee earlier. His mother is waiting on justice for, I think, close to a decade now. It's untenable, and it doesn't bode well for the trust in the justice system. So we have urged the government to put the resources necessary and move ahead with the recommendations that have been made numerous times over the years.
All right, fair enough. I would love to get into some of those recommendations, but that's for another time.
Absolutely.
Right now, I want to get into the campaign that you have, Justice for All. What's the overall objective for that campaign?
The objective, let me start by saying that every single Jamaican citizen, we have an entitlement to our rights. It's not a privilege that people can give us and take away. It's in the Constitution. And the purpose of the Justice for All campaign is to educate persons about those rights. And I believe when you know your rights and you have an opportunity to really seek redress if you believe that your rights have been violated. The campaign also will be teaching you about responsibilities, because sometimes when we have our rights, it doesn't mean that you have the right to then go and infringe on somebody else's. So we will be talking to persons about their rights and responsibilities, how to get redress if those rights have been breached. And again, we're going to be focusing on some aspects of violence prevention and reduction. So there is the hope that JFJ, and certainly the objective, that we will make a contribution to the overall crime levels in society. And again, demanding state accountability if it is that it is the state who breaches our rights.
That's a very broad.
Yes.
Okay. I want to get into the different components of the campaign, because you gave me an overall thing.
Yes.
But what are the components of it?
I think the first thing that I would touch on, we have our justice tour. So basically, this is a community intervention. We're going to be going across the island in our little bus, our justice bus as we call it. It's a branded JFJ bus. We're going to be doing pop-ups across the different parishes, the major towns, and so on, to do what I mentioned earlier, to educate you about your rights. You can have interaction with our team members, get a sense. So what are those rights that I have? What do you mean? We have some rights games that we're going to be playing in these communities. We're going to be doing school interventions as well, because we believe that our youngsters need to have an appreciation of the rights that they have, but again, the responsibility, civic education, for example. Within that, we're going to be conducting mobile legal clinics. So for example, if it is that you believe your rights have been violated, you have an opportunity to speak to our attorneys who will be on the tour with us, and you can get some legal advice and, depending on the matter, possible representation. So that is the major thing. We have so many other pieces. I have this book with me.
Nice.
Now, we launched this on August 6th as we look forward to celebrate Independence Day. And the reason for us launching it is, we're in our 60th year, and we believe, as we talk about a maturing democracy, every Jamaican citizen should have an understanding of what that means, what the structure of the government is. Very few people, for example, don't even know that they don't vote directly for their prime minister. You vote for a political party, and then when you go to parliament, they appoint the prime minister through nomination accordingly. Very few people know about these things. They don't know that we're a constitutional monarchy. So we give an idea of what the structure of the government is. We explain the role of the Director of Public Prosecution, the role of the Auditor General, and then we go into the rights conversation. What are some of those rights that you have in the Constitution? Freedom of expression, freedom of association, assembly, all of these niceties that we have. I think we need to get excited about human rights. So it's not this broad, abstract thing that JFJ speaks about. We need to be excited about it so that we can demand it and again respect the rights of others. It's a beautiful book, I believe, that every Jamaican should really...
It looks interesting. How can I get this? Is this going to be available to the public? Is it going to be online? I mean,
it's online right now. So if you follow our socials, you can go and you can click on the link tree, I believe it is called, on our IG and Twitter, and you can get it. But if you need a hard copy, we're just asking for a small contribution just to continue the reprinting of the book, and it's for $1,500 at the office. So just contact us and then we can provide. Not at all. I don't think so.
I see you have on your list of components climate justice.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Now, one of the rights that you have in the Constitution is the right to a healthy and safe environment. Yes. So it means that the unfortunate situation that we saw with Rio Cobra recently, it ought not to have happened because we're threatening water sanitation, you know, some of the endemic plants and animals and so on that we have there at risk. You saw the fish kills and so on. When we look at the impact of bauxite mining and illegal dumping, you know, it affects our health, it affects livelihoods, forced relocation. So climate justice is really educating persons about the impact of climate change, but also the impact of how we go about possibly damaging the environment and how it impacts you, the individual, as I said, your livelihood, your health. So when we go out in the communities, we're going to be educating persons, starting from the constitutional rights that they have, the laws that we have, the roles of the state agencies such as NEPA and otherwise, and how they are mandated to be protecting your rights. And when those rights are violated, as I said, you call JFJ, we're here.
It's interesting that you brought up the Rio Cobra.
Yes.
I have a few questions where that's concerned, if you don't mind. So it's being said that there is a fine that the company will have to pay.
Yes.
Is the JFJ keeping tabs on that situation?
We absolutely are. It's a focus area of the organization. So when these situations arise, what we do, we work with other partner organizations such as Jamaica Environment Trust, JET, and we are going to be going in the communities. So we're already in dialogue with some of the community leaders. We're in dialogue with JET. We have some sessions coming up where we're going to be engaging the community leaders and residents. And if persons wish to pursue the matter legally, then JFJ, we stand ready to support, basically, because when fines are imposed against private sector organization or anybody who is involved in corruption or breach of any law, a fine is imposed and the government gets those funds. But unfortunately, the trickle down doesn't reach the persons who are actually affected.
I was going to ask you about that.
So that is something which is why there are different things that organization, human rights organization can do. We can put together a class action, if you will, against private sector organization to say you need to pay over compensatory damages to persons who have been affected. If it is that the fault is at the hands of the state, whether by lack of protective laws or and I'm not saying this is it in this particular case, but generally, if the state is at fault, we can bring a constitutional challenge to the state. So you ask them to do better by using the courts, because again, the state has the ultimate responsibility to protect all of us.
What's been the response to all your various intervention activities? Do Jamaicans accept the role that you play? Are they confident that the JFJ is representing the people?
I think that question will deserve a nuanced response. You know, I look, for example, JFJ brought a case before the courts focusing on the state of emergency, the Everton Douglas et al. Case. and we won, where the circumstances where those 5 men were detained were deemed unconstitutional because it breached their rights. And persons responded quite positively to say, these are the challenges with the SOE, I don't believe it should continue. But then you have other individuals, understandably so, the crime rate is high and they see JFJ as an impediment. And we understand, therefore, that the role of JFJ is to educate the people about our functions, educate them about these possible human rights violations. And when persons believe that we're an impediment or we may cause further criminality, and we explain to them the gaps in the law, the protections that they themselves have, and JFJ's role in that, the conversation and the tide changes, and then persons are more receptive. I can tell you, we've gotten many phone calls just by having conversations such as this, and persons said, boy, me hear what JFJ say, and I think we should continue to do it, because before me never understand. So it means that we need to better explain our functions to the Jamaican people a little bit more. So I think with information and education, whatever negative perceptions may have been there, it certainly changes.
Well, it's been a lot of food for thought. I want to congratulate you on the printing of this book. I'm sure it's going to be educational, especially for schools, because a lot of these youngsters that are coming up, they don't know their rights as Jamaicans.
Yes.
So it will be educational. I want to thank you for the campaign that's coming up, and I want to thank you for coming to the PBCJ to help us to educate people, because we are the people's station. Very good work. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right, so that's where we have to leave you today in this edition of the Morning Coffee Guest. Thanks to our special guest and our hard-working production team. Until next time, walk good.